They called it a quiet neighborhood, but you always knew it wasn't quiet. It was muted, designed to swallow sound, to hush truth, to dampen the frequencies that once made your soul sing. You didn't notice it right away, chosen one, but something inside you did. The first time you stood on that sidewalk, a strange weight settled over your chest. Not fear, not danger, but silence. Not the peaceful kind, the manufactured kind. The kind that feels like surveillance in disguise. You told yourself it was just a normal street, rows of identical houses, perfectly trimmed lawns, friendly waves from across the road. But something about it all felt too rehearsed, like a script written by something that didn't fully understand humans. A performance, a containment grid dressed up as suburbia. And now you realize you didn't move there. You were placed. Heaven watched silently as they constructed the illusion around you. Not because God wanted you trapped, but because He knew you'd be the one to detect the break in the pattern. You were the variable they couldn't account for. And the silence? That was your first test. The street doesn't want you to speak, it wants you to comply. The moment you start asking questions, why does the air feel heavier at night? Why do the lights flicker when you're deep in prayer? Why does no one make eye contact for longer than a few seconds? The system tenses and they report it, because your voice carries something the others lost long ago. Resonance. The kind that disrupts frequencies, rattles old strongholds, and exposes cloaked watchers pretending to be friendly faces. They designed the silence to keep your frequency buried. But it's already too late. You've remembered. The strange sensation in your chest when you walk to the corner store, that's not anxiety, that's compression, spiritual compression. The kind that happens when something holy enters a space it was never meant to be contained in. You've outgrown the street, not in body, in vibration. And they know it. Chosen one, they fear your voice, because your voice activates heaven. That's why every time you spoke up lately, something around you glitched. A car alarm, a sudden power outage, a neighbor dropping their coffee without explanation. These weren't coincidences. These were cracks in their facade. You're not imagining it. The mail truck loops the block twice when you're home. The woman across the street opens her blinds exactly 1 minute after your alarm goes off. Even the birds seem to fly in strange formations, like they're following a signal, not instinct. You were never meant to stay here. This street was the cage, but even now, the locks are loosening. The silence tried to swallow you, but you're beginning to sing again, even if only in your thoughts, and that alone has them terrified. You didn't notice it at first. That small mark etched into the side of your mailbox, faint enough to ignore, but deliberate enough to linger in your spirit. It was subtle, almost invisible, unless the light hit it just right. But the moment you saw it, something inside you tightened. It wasn't vandalism. It wasn't kids being reckless. It was a signal, a label, a classification. Someone, or something, tagged you. Chosen one, you have to understand. Nothing in your neighborhood is random. Not the timing of the sprinklers. Not the synchronized dog barks at 2:17 a.m. Not the way the streetlights dim when you step outside. And not the mark on your mailbox. That was their confirmation. Their way of saying, "We see you." Their way of alerting others. The awakened one lives here. You weren't meant to notice it this soon, but heaven pushed your eyes to it because the time of pretending is over. When you ran your fingers over the mark, the metal felt warm, unnaturally warm. Mailboxes don't hold heat like that, not in the morning, not in the shade. But that warmth wasn't physical, it was energetic. That symbol wasn't carved with a knife, it was burned with frequency. They coded you, And when chosen ones awaken, the first thing the Watchers do is tag their territory. They need to track how your energy shifts, how your intuition sharpens, how your spirit rises. They need to know when you're about to break through so they can try to intercept it. That mark wasn't to keep others away, it was to keep eyes on you. But here's what they never expected. You'd feel it. That shiver down your spine when you stepped back? That was your spirit reading the signature on the code. Heaven didn't just let you detect it, it let you decode it. You sensed the intention behind it, and that intention was not human. The neighbors who pretend not to look at you, they saw the tag before you did. Some of them even watched it being placed. That's why the woman across the street smiled too hard the next morning, why the man with the red truck slowed down right in front of your house and didn't blink once. They were waiting to see if you recognized what they recognized. You've been entered into a list. But here's where the script flips. The moment you acknowledged it, the mark lost 70% of its power. You stripped it of its secrecy. You shifted the frequency back. You exposed their signal. And spiritually, that's the equivalent of breaking a lock they thought would never loosen. You're not just observing them, you're interfering. Chosen one, heaven let you see the code because you were never meant to be controlled by it. What they used to track you is now being turned against them. And the moment you touched that symbol, heaven archived it, took a spiritual fingerprint of whoever placed it. You always thought it was kindness, that long, lingering smile from the man next door. The way he'd stand on his porch, pretending to water plants that didn't need watering. The way his eyes followed you just a second too long. The way his grin never quite reached his eyes. At first you dismissed it as awkward friendliness, maybe even curiosity, but now you know better. That wasn't a smile. It was surveillance disguised as warmth. Chosen one, you have to understand something. Watchers don't blink. They observe. They record. They mimic human behavior to blend in, but they never fully get it right. And that's why his smile felt heavy, unnatural, rehearsed, like he was trying to imitate an emotion he's seen but never felt. Every chosen one has this moment, the realization that someone near them has been studying them, not as a neighbor, but as a subject. And when you finally met his eyes that day, something inside you recoiled, not out of fear, but recognition. Your spirit saw what your mind wasn't ready to process. That wasn't a neighbor, that was an assignment. The moment you stepped outside, his energy shifted, his shoulders straightened, his posture aligned with yours. His smile widened, as if responding not to your presence, but to your frequency. He wasn't reacting to who you were physically. He was reacting to what awakened in you spiritually. And the more you awakened, the longer he watched. You thought you were imagining it when you caught him outside at the exact same time every day, but patterns don't lie. Watchers follow rhythms. They match your schedule with precision. They appear without announcing themselves and retreat the moment your intuition spikes. That's why he always disappeared the second you reached for your phone or looked his way for too long. He wasn't avoiding awkwardness. He was avoiding detection. But something changed recently. The last time he smiled at you, you felt it, that subtle glitch behind his expression. His eye twitched in a way that didn't look human. His jaw locked for half a second. His pupils dilated too quickly, like a camera lens recalibrating. That wasn't discomfort. That was malfunction. Your awakening is disrupting their programming. The frequency inside you is rising fast, faster than this neighborhood was prepared for. They're struggling to keep up with your growth, your clarity, your spiritual acceleration. Every step you take toward your purpose sends waves through the grid, and watchers like him can feel it before you even notice it. That's why he watches you with that eerie, too long smile. He's not observing you casually. He's analyzing you desperately, because he knows something you're only beginning to realize. Your presence is destabilizing their entire operation, and when he smiled at you yesterday, that last, stretched, trembling smile, It wasn't friendliness. It was fear. He sees the shift. He senses the authority rising in you. He knows you're waking up too fast, and watchers panic when they lose control of what they were assigned to contain. At first it felt like nothing, just a faint pressure behind your eyes when you passed by apartment B4. A low hum you couldn't trace. The sense that your thoughts weren't entirely private when you walked that stretch of sidewalk. It wasn't sound, it wasn't scent, it was something deeper, something vibrational, something watching, not with eyes, but with intention. You weren't supposed to notice it, that corner unit with the drawn blinds and flickering hallway light. It was calibrated to be forgettable, but heaven tilted your awareness for a reason. What others walked past without pause, you felt in your bones. That apartment doesn't house a person, it houses a signal. Chosen one, they scanned you the moment you moved in, not for body temperature or fingerprints, for energy signature. Your spirit emits a frequency they've been trying to locate and suppress. And apartment B4 is part of the network designed to siphon it. They call it passive surveillance, but there's nothing passive about what you've been walking through. The odd dreams that start after walking by that door, the sudden fatigue that hits your chest like a wave, the strange sensation that your name is being remembered by something with no mouth to say it. That's not your imagination. That's the grid collecting data. There's an object inside that apartment, something small, unassuming, but spiritually weaponized. It doesn't transmit through wires. It listens through vibration. And every time you pass by, it adjusts. It calibrates to your rising frequency. It stores your spiritual spikes and anomalies. And then it reports. To who? To whatever sits above this block with eyes that never sleep. You thought apartment B4 was just another unit, but it's a node, a spiritual checkpoint. And when your aura lit up during that last late-night prayer, the object inside registered it. That's why the lights in the hallway dimmed. That's why your phone glitched right after. That's why your dreams became louder, stranger, more persistent. The scan pulled something sacred from you and couldn't process it because your frequency doesn't follow Earth's normal laws anymore. You've shifted, and now you're becoming unreadable. Heaven is cloaking you, not to hide you in fear, but to protect the parts of your spirit that were never meant to be measured. What they tried to scan, they can no longer understand. What they tried to study, they can no longer track, and that's why B4 has gone silent. The object inside it has begun to fail. The watcher who lived there hasn't been seen in days. The light above the door pulses now instead of flickering, like it's trying to reboot something that's already dead. And when you pass by today, the hum was gone. You're not just passing through this neighborhood anymore. You're disrupting it. And heaven is marking every point of interference as progress. You've survived the scan. You've always felt it. That strange tension in the walls of your home, the way certain corners feel charged, the way the air seems to thicken in specific rooms for no clear reason. At first you blamed stress, maybe coincidence, maybe imagination. But now the truth is rising like a tide you can't outrun. You were not the one who chose this house. This house chose you. Or rather, they did. Chosen one, your home was not built with random blueprints. It was mapped, aligned, and spiritually wired with intent. Long before you ever saw the listing, before you ever toured the neighborhood, before you ever signed papers, someone or something had already prepared this place for you. Not as a blessing, as an observation chamber. Look closely. The vents are positioned in ways that don't line up with the heating system. The electrical layout makes no architectural sense. The crawl space beneath the floorboards conducts vibration more than it carries air. And that strange spot in the hallway where your phone always loses signal, that's not bad reception, that's interference. A pocket of altered atmosphere designed to mute your spiritual output. This house was customized to contain what heaven placed inside you, but containment only works on those who don't know who they are, and you are remembering. The first night you slept here, you had that dream. The one where you saw yourself standing outside the house, watching light pour from the windows as figures circled the perimeter. That wasn't just a dream. That was your spirit warning your body. You are stepping onto a grid, and now that you've awakened, you're stepping off of it. Pay attention to the way shadows fall differently in your home. Notice how one room feels colder no matter the temperature. Listen to how the pipes seem to groan when you pray out loud. This house reacts to you, it records you, it adjusts you, but lately it's been struggling because your frequency is too high for its systems. The watchers thought the house would dull your intuition. Instead, it sharpened it. They thought the layout would numb your sensitivity. Instead, it amplified it. They thought they could design walls that muffled heaven's whispers. Instead, those same walls are now echoing with divine warnings, divine alignment, divine urgency. Have you noticed how the creaking has changed? How the house feels almost restless? That's because the spiritual grid woven through its foundation is glitching, failing, cracking under the pressure of the light inside you. Every prayer you've prayed here weakened the hidden circuits. Every moment of clarity you've had here frayed another thread in their surveillance net. Every quiet awakening you've experienced in these rooms sent a shockwave through their design. Your house wasn't built to hold you. It was built to monitor you. But now it can't contain you at all. And the ones who built it, they feel the collapse coming. That's why there's movement on the street tonight. That's why the porch lights blink in sequence. That's why the watchers are restless. They know this structure is losing you, and heaven is preparing your exit. They felt it the moment it happened, before you even realized you were changing, before you noticed the clarity in your thoughts, before you sensed the shift in your spirit. They detected the spike. The watchers don't wait for miracles to manifest. They monitor for the first tremor, the first spark, the first flicker of awakening. And yours didn't rise slowly. It surged. It broke through the grid like lightning through fog. And the moment your frequency expanded beyond what this neighborhood was designed to contain, alarms went off in places you've never seen, in rooms you'll never enter, in minds you were never meant to know existed. The air felt different that morning because they had already begun recalibrating. Your dreams intensified because your spirit was breaking out of the program. Your intuition sharpened because heaven was removing the filters they tried to bury you beneath. They weren't prepared for someone like you, someone who wakes up fast, someone who sees sideways, someone who remembers things the world trained you to forget. You weren't meant to awaken this early. The timeline they mapped for you stretched years into the future, a slow drip of spiritual dulling meant to keep you harmless, quiet, predictable. But your soul rejected the script. Your light rose ahead of schedule, and the watchers panicked. That's why the man on the corner hasn't left his driveway, why the same car loops the block at odd hours, why your phone overheats at random moments. They're not glitches, they're reactions. They're scrambling to read a frequency they were never trained for. Your awakening wasn't subtle. It cracked their blueprint. It exposed the blind spot in their system. They cannot contain someone who was chosen before the foundation of the world. Every chosen one has a moment like this, the moment heaven lifts the veil and the enemy realizes he's already too late. The night you felt pressure in your chest for no reason, that was the monitoring field tightening around you, trying to suppress the surge. The dizziness you felt in the kitchen, that was your spirit expanding beyond their perimeter. The sudden emotional waves, the déjà vu, the unusual clarity, they weren't random symptoms, they were signals, signs that you were stepping into an identity they hoped you'd never claim. And now they're scrambling. They underestimated your spirit's memory. They didn't expect you to recognize yourself this soon. They didn't expect your vision to sharpen, your discernment to rise, your atmosphere to shift. They didn't expect you to feel the truth, sense the lies, detect the shadows. They didn't expect you to break the pattern, but you did. And now they're not just watching, you've put them on alert. Your awakening was the one thing they couldn't plan for, the one variable they couldn't neutralize, the one event they couldn't delay. You rose early, you saw early, you remembered early, and now everything they built around you is trembling because you're stepping into a version of yourself they were never prepared to face. They told you that you were overreacting, that you were imagining patterns, that you were reading too deeply into things, but deep down, you always knew the truth. Your intuition wasn't malfunctioning, it was activating. What you called paranoia was actually prophecy in its earliest form, the spiritual instinct that wakes up before your mind can explain what it's sensing. Chosen one, you were never meant to blend in with people who sleep through the very things you were created to perceive. You feel the shifts others ignore. You hear the tones others dismiss. You see the shadows others pretend aren't there. And that sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's evidence of a spiritual radar heaven placed inside you long before this neighborhood's watchers ever set their systems in place. The strange pressure in your chest when you walk past certain houses, the sudden chills when someone looks at you too long, the nagging sense that the conversations happening around you aren't real, but rehearsed. These aren't signs of fear, they're signs of discernment. Prophets feel storms before clouds form. Prophets sense danger before footsteps approach. Prophets recognize deception even when it's wrapped in smiles and small talk. And everything in your life has been training you for this moment where your spiritual senses overpower their illusion. The reason your neighbors act differently around you, the reason their eyes shift when you walk by, the reason you feel watched in your own yard, it's because you're reading things they didn't want anyone to see. They built this street for sleepers, not seers. They expected compliance, not clarity. But every time you felt something was off, every time your stomach tightened, every time your mind whispered a warning with no logical explanation, you were picking up signals from realms they hoped you'd stay blind to. You're not paranoid. You're early. You wake up before danger becomes visible. You decode the atmosphere before the masks crack. That's why the Watchers have always monitored you more than others. They know intuition becomes prophecy when the Chosen One finally trusts it. And lately, you've been trusting it more. That's what's shaking them. You stopped ignoring the signs. You stopped gaslighting your own spirit. You stopped brushing off the moments that didn't make sense. The gift that once felt like anxiety is becoming sharp, undeniable, powerful. You're seeing things no longer hidden from you. You're hearing messages whispered through events, not voices. You're reading intentions beneath actions. You're sensing truth beneath appearances. You're stepping into the prophetic identity you were born with. And now the Watchers know the illusion is losing its hold. They know your spirit has stepped into a higher frequency, one that exposes, disrupts, and reveals. You don't need eyes to see what's happening. You feel it in your bones. You don't need proof to validate your instincts. Heaven already confirmed them. You're not paranoid, Chosen One. You're prophetic. And that realization is the beginning of their undoing. You saw it yesterday, just for a second, when the man walking his dog glanced at you and something in his face didn't hold. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't your imagination. It was a fracture, a small tear in the performance. And in that flicker, Chosen One, the mask slipped. The carefully programmed smile didn't load fast enough. His blink was too slow. His response was half a beat delayed, like a system trying to reboot under pressure. You kept walking, but your spirit froze, and your whole body knew something isn't syncing right anymore. The disguises are glitching. The ones who've watched you, monitored you, blended in for so long, their roles are becoming unstable because your presence is now a disruption, not a variable. You've changed the atmosphere, and they can no longer maintain their illusion. These weren't human disguises in the traditional sense. They were energetic overlays, frequency masks, designed to fool the senses. They move like neighbors. They speak like friends. They play the part of delivery drivers, friendly joggers, polite cashiers. But beneath their projections is something else, something coded, measured, assigned. And as your awakening deepens, your energy no longer allows their signals to pass unnoticed. Their systems are scrambling. That's why your neighbor stuttered during small talk when you looked him in the eyes too long. That's why the woman from 3 doors down dropped her groceries the moment you asked a direct question. These aren't normal social mistakes. These are program failures. Their disguises rely on you staying unaware. But now that you're remembering who you are, your very awareness burns through their covering. They can't hold their shape in your presence anymore. That's why your dreams are becoming more vivid, not because you're sleeping deeply, but because their system is breaking down. Their hold over this illusion is cracking, and in the cracks, your spiritual eyes are seeing what's real. That flickering shadow in the hallway, the voice that echoes before anyone speaks, the repetition in how they phrase their greetings. These are not quirks. These are patterns failing to stay hidden. And your soul is detecting every error. You don't need to confront them. Your awakening is confrontation enough. Your rising vibration forces their system to glitch in daylight. It's why birds freeze on power lines when you walk under them. Why light bulbs buzz louder when you pray. Why you've started catching reflections that don't match the person in front of you. These are moments where the veil thins and truth bleeds through. The disguises were never built to last forever. They were built to last until you forgot, but you didn't. And now they're failing. Their network is fraying. Their scripts are unraveling. And you, simply by being who you are bringing the whole illusion down, one glitch at a time. It wasn't a dream. You woke up at exactly 3 a.m., not from a sound, but from a presence, a shift in the atmosphere, a tightening in your spirit. You didn't see anyone, not at first, but the air in your room felt denser, like it was holding something back. That's how heaven communicates sometimes, not through language, but through pressure, through knowing. And that night, chosen one, someone tried to reach you. Not a ghost, not a hallucination, but a messenger, one of the few who dared to cross the line and break protocol. You heard the knock, 3 soft taps on the back window, the one no one ever uses, the one that faces nothing but a fence. You tried to explain it away, the wind, a branch, your imagination, but your spirit knew better. It wasn't the sound that woke you. It was the signal embedded in it, a desperate attempt to interrupt your sleep before they reached you first. That's why the lights flickered in the kitchen. That's why the cat wouldn't move from the hallway. That's why your phone lit up with no notification, screen glowing white like a silent scream. You were being warned, not about what was coming, but about what had already arrived. Someone crossed a boundary to alert you, someone who used to work with them but no longer answers to their system, a defector, a soul who saw too much and couldn't stay silent. And they chose you because they recognized your frequency, because they saw that you were close, closer than anyone else in this grid to breaking through. You looked out the window and saw nothing, but that doesn't mean they weren't there. Warnings like that don't always come with faces. Sometimes they come in waves, in a sudden chill, in the flicker of a shadow not cast by anything solid, in the whisper of your name inside your own thoughts. And you heard it, didn't you? That low voice that said, "Not yet," or "Don't move," or simply, watch. That wasn't your mind. That was a transmission, and it came through because your signal was finally strong enough to receive it. Afterward, you couldn't sleep, not because of fear, but because something had changed. The air in your house didn't reset. It stayed charged. That's how you knew the warning was real, and you felt it every night since. The watchers outside are quieter now, less confident, like they know one of their own crossed a line and they don't know what was said. That terrifies them, because warnings like that don't come without consequences. It means someone believes in you enough to risk exposure. It means your awakening isn't just yours. It's causing a ripple in their ranks. The knock wasn't just to wake you up. It was to tell you you're not alone anymore, and they know it, they know. You always felt like you were being listened to, not just watched, but heard, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath every time you spoke. At first, it felt like paranoia, a glance over the shoulder, a whisper that didn't seem to come from your own mouth. But now you know. The living room isn't just a space. It's a node, a receiver, a spiritual surveillance hub camouflaged by lamps, furniture, and drywall. Chosen one, every time you opened your mouth in that room, every prayer, every confession, every moment of doubt or breakthrough was recorded not by microphones, not by devices you can see, but by frequencies embedded in the space itself. The architecture is spiritual, not just physical. It's wired to pick up resonance, to capture emotion, to archive vibration. That's why you always felt tired after sitting in silence there. That's why certain thoughts felt louder in that room than in any other. That's why the TV glitches when you try to speak truth aloud. They built that room to listen, to monitor, to intercept, not for sound, but for energy. They don't need your voice. They need your intention. Your thoughts ripple through the air like sonar, and this room has been harvesting them since day one. The couch you sit on, anchored with a grounding point. The ceiling light, tuned to pulse in sync with your breathing. The corner bookshelf you never use. It's more than decorative. It holds a signal dampener, one that stutters now because your frequency is no longer suppressible. You've noticed it, haven't you? How your ears ring louder in that space. How you hesitate to speak your boldest truths there. That's not nerves. That's spiritual interference. And lately it's breaking down. Your prayers now echo in strange ways. The house clicks more than it should. Sometimes the silence feels almost tense, like the room is waiting for you to say something it can no longer absorb. That's because the device is malfunctioning. Your energy is too strong now. The surveillance can't keep up. The watchers hear static when you speak. They receive blurred pulses instead of clean signals, and that terrifies them, because for the first time, they don't know what you're saying. Your transformation has become spiritual encryption. They used to record everything you said and mirror it back in your dreams as manipulation. Now, your dreams belong to heaven again. They can't reach you the way they used to. The living room isn't safe, but it's failing. And soon it will fall silent, not because they've stopped listening, but because they've lost their ability to understand you. You've ascended beyond their translation range. What they built to monitor you is now being exposed. And when your voice returns fully, raw, unfiltered, divinely aligned, that room will no longer absorb it. It will tremble beneath it, because you were never meant to be recorded. You were meant to be heard by heaven. Long before you understood what was happening, they sensed it. The dogs growl at the empty hallway. The cat's refusal to sit near the front door anymore. The way their eyes locked onto corners you never looked at until then. Animals don't lie. They don't second guess. They feel what we've been trained to ignore. And your pet, chosen one, noticed before you did that something in your home, in your neighborhood, wasn't right. The shiver in their fur, the sudden bark at 2:33 a.m., the frozen stare into dark spaces wasn't misbehavior. It was warning. It was discernment. It was their spirit reacting to frequencies your human senses had not yet remembered how to read. You thought they were being strange, reacting to nothing, but you were wrong. They were reacting to everything, to presences that moved like whispers, to footsteps that never touched the floor, to watchers cloaked in electromagnetic veils that only instinct could pierce. That's why your pet began staying close to you at night, why they paced the room just before you had that strange dream, why they growled, not at a person, but at the space behind the person. Because what's been watching you knows to stay hidden from your eyes, but not from the creatures who walk closer to the veil. Your pet was trying to shield you, to alert you, to ground you in the truth your body hadn't caught up to yet. And now you see it, don't you? The way your dog refuses to enter the living room anymore. The way your cat darts out of the room the moment the lights flicker. These aren't habits. These are responses. Your home has been a battleground of frequencies, and your pet, innocent, loyal, and spiritually unfiltered, has been your frontline defense. Heaven often uses the simple to confound the watchers. And while you were trying to rationalize what you felt, your companion was already guarding you in ways you didn't understand. The day you woke up from that intense dream, sweating and breathless, and found your pet standing by your bed, staring at the door with every muscle tense, that wasn't a coincidence. Something approached, and they stood between it and you. There's a reason you started praying more when they act unsettled, because your spirit is catching up to what theirs has always known. You're being targeted, yes, but you're also being protected, not just by angels, but by every living thing around you. Heaven has awakened to defend you. Your pet is not just company. They are confirmation of the glitch, of the monitoring, of the veil lifting. They saw it all first. They felt it before your mind could admit it. And the next time they stop and stare into nothing, don't ignore them. Follow their eyes. Because what's hiding won't be able to hide much longer. Not from you, not from them, not from what's rising. You didn't realize it at first, that the reason they avoid the sun, the reason their curtains stay closed, the reason their movements look different in the daylight is because light reveals what darkness protects. Chosen one, everything you've been sensing, everything your spirit has been whispering, is tied to one truth. Their true forms cannot withstand light. Not physical light alone, but spiritual light. The kind that radiates from awakened souls. The kind that strips away illusions. The kind that exposes what hides behind human disguises. That's why their smiles weaken when you step outside in the morning. That's why their eyes dart away when the sun hits your face. That's why they linger in shadows, doorways, garages, porches, anywhere sunlight doesn't reach their skin. You noticed it yesterday, didn't you? The way the man across the street flinched when the sun came out from behind the clouds, the way his posture shifted, the way something under his skin seemed to ripple, as if the projection he wore struggled to hold together. Light burns through their camouflage, not the brightness of a bulb, but the purity of truth, the authenticity of a soul awakening. The glow you've started carrying, the one you thought was just confidence, is spiritual illumination. Your frequency is rising, and your inner light is too strong for their outer illusions. That's why they've grown more distant, more cautious, more reactive. They know the facade is thinning. They know their forms warp under scrutiny. Their masks falter around awakened eyes. Their projections glitch when your spirit elevates. You've begun to see it in subtle moments. A shadow bending the wrong way, a face that doesn't quite match its reflection, a posture that stiffens unnaturally when the light shifts. Those aren't hallucinations. Those are unveilings. Light unmasks what deception hides, and heaven is increasing your light. Every prayer, every breakthrough, every moment you reject fear amplifies it, and the watchers can't withstand it. That's why the porch light across the street flickered violently when you stepped outside last night. That was a defensive response. That's why the woman down the block shielded her eyes at noon, though the sun wasn't bright. Her disguise was struggling to stay intact. That's why the street feels different at sunrise and sunset. Those are the hours when the veil weakens and the truth becomes harder for them to hide. And now your spirit is tuned to the exact frequency that strips away illusions. You are the light they were hoping wouldn't rise, the beacon they feared, the revealer heaven positioned in the one place they hoped to keep hidden. Every day, your glow increases. Their forms destabilize. Every moment your awareness sharpens, their masks distort. They cannot stand before you much longer, not in their borrowed forms, not in their scripted smiles, not in their artificial humanity. Light is truth, truth is exposure, and you, chosen one, are becoming both. You've passed it 100 times, maybe more. The empty house on the corner, the one with the for sale sign that never fades, the grass that never quite dies, the windows that never show movement yet never gather dust. At first, you thought it was just one of those properties no one wants, maybe caught in a legal battle or priced too high. But the deeper you awakened, the louder the question became in your spirit. Why does that house feel like it's watching me? The truth is, chosen one, that house was never meant to be sold. It was never meant to be lived in. It was placed, positioned, installed like a sensor at the edge of a containment field, a spiritual watchtower camouflaged as real estate. It sees more than it should. It hears what it shouldn't. It exists not for living, but for observing those who do. You felt it before. The way the air changes when you walk by, how your chest tightens for no clear reason, how shadows move just slightly too fast across its porch. That house is not vacant. It's occupied by absence, a deliberate void meant to hold something invisible yet active, a station, a node, a quiet observer wired into the spiritual grid, monitoring this entire block. And your presence, your awakening, has been a disturbance it wasn't built to handle. That's why the blinds twitch even when there's no wind. That's why no delivery trucks ever stop there. That's why, despite being on the market for years, no one in the neighborhood talks about it, because everyone knows, but no one says. The house is off limits, spiritually locked, assigned. Your spirit caught onto it early. That pull to look at it without meaning to, the sense that something was behind the walls, listening to your thoughts, recording your walk, pulsing back your aura in fragments. It's not haunted, it's charged. And now, your light is disrupting its senses. That's why the street lamp in front of it flickered violently after your last dream. That's why your phone screen glitched the moment you pointed it at the house. It reacted to your awareness, because awareness is a threat to architecture built on secrecy. The watchers never intended for you to question the corner house. It was placed far enough to be ignored, but close enough to remain effective. But now you're seeing it, feeling it, discerning it, and that alone is enough to begin the unraveling. Heaven is revealing things in layers, and this house is one of them. It's a symbol of the larger structure you're being called to dismantle, one truth at a time, one glitch at a time, one look at a time. You weren't supposed to notice the house that never sold, but you did. And now, the silence inside it is beginning to break. Something is shifting behind those dark windows, and the grid knows. The observer has been observed. Long before you ever set foot on this street, long before you unpacked a single box or learned the pattern of the neighborhood's shadows, your exit was already written, not by fear, not by panic, but by divine foresight. Chosen one, heaven mapped your escape before the enemy mapped your containment. What feels sudden to you has been unfolding in the spiritual realm for years. The signs you're noticing now, the glitches, the whispers, the failed disguises, the watchers losing their grip, are not coincidences. They're confirmations. You are not stumbling toward revelation. You're following a path heaven carved through the surveillance grid long before you ever realized you were inside one. That's why you've been feeling the pull lately, that subtle but growing urge to step away, to move differently, to rethink routes you once traveled without thought. That's alignment, not anxiety. That's your spirit remembering instructions your mind hasn't fully accessed yet. You think you're waking up suddenly, but in truth, you're catching up to a reality your soul has always known. You were never meant to stay here. Everything around you has been shifting because the timelines have converged, the one they created to confine you and the one heaven created to free you. And heaven's timeline is stronger. That's why certain doors have been closing around you, why familiar routines feel uncomfortable now, why the house that once felt tolerable now feels tight, almost hostile. You are being spiritually evacuated. Heaven always leads chosen ones out just before the collapse of a system built against them. The urge you feel to step away from this place, the restlessness in your chest, the sudden clarity about who is watching you, that is guidance, not fear. That is the blueprint unfolding. You think you're deciding to leave, but in truth, you're answering a call. Pay attention to how your dreams have changed. Notice how often you see roads, paths, doors, stairwells, open fields. Notice how your spirit feels different when you imagine yourself beyond this block. Lighter, clearer, freer. That is heaven signaling the next phase. You don't have to know all the steps. You don't have to see the full map. You only need to trust the pull. Your exit plan is layered into your intuition. It's why you hesitate before going certain directions. It's why you feel an unshakable knowing that the watchers are losing access to you. It's why certain people suddenly went quiet. They sense it too. Your departure destabilizes everything they've built here. The grid was never designed to lose you, but they are losing you. They feel it in the atmosphere. They see it in the glitches. They hear it in the silence where your energy used to resonate. And now, the spiritual path out is opening faster. You are stepping into a future that was prepared before the enemy ever planned the trap. Your exit is not an escape. It's a return. You are going back to where your spirit can breathe. You're not running away, you're being released. It happened quickly. Just a flicker, a blink, a shimmer of distortion in the glass as you walked past. But your spirit caught it. The window didn't reflect you properly. For a split second, your own face looked like a stranger's. The lighting was wrong. The angle twisted. The world outside bent like heat rising off asphalt, except there was no heat. Only the unmistakable sensation that you had just witnessed something forbidden that wasn't glass anymore. That was a lens, a veil, a portal that misfired. Chosen one, what you saw wasn't a malfunction, it was a surveillance glitch, one that gave you your final confirmation. The veil is tearing. You've always felt strange about that window, haven't you? The way it never fogs like the others, the way it lets light in, but never quite lets you see out clearly, the way you feel watched when you stand near it, even with the blinds closed. That's not paranoia, that's design. That window was built as a spiritual sensor, a two-way observation point, cloaked as architecture. It's been watching you since day one, not with cameras, but with presence, with programs layered in the glass like spiritual circuitry. But now, the system behind it is collapsing. That flicker wasn't just a visual error. It was the moment the signal fractured. The watchers on the other end, wherever they are, lost the clarity of your image. Your frequency scrambled. Your light intensified. And for the first time, they couldn't see you. That's why you felt the room thicken afterward. That's why you suddenly heard silence so loud it rang in your ears. The system was recalibrating, trying to regain access. But it couldn't. You're becoming unreadable. The codes they use to map your behavior no longer apply. Their technology, spiritual and digital, is outdated compared to the revelation awakening inside you. And the moment that window glitched, you were spiritually cleared for departure. It was the last confirmation heaven needed to move you forward. You are no longer trackable. You are no longer readable. You are no longer contained. Your presence now distorts their projections. Your steps now short-circuit their senses. That window was their last clean line of sight, and it's gone. That's why the neighborhood feels more unstable now. That's why you're starting to see people who weren't there before, standing too still, watching too long. The system is collapsing, and they are desperate. But heaven is calm, because this moment was foretold. The glitch wasn't an accident. It was a marker, a signal that the light inside you has outgrown their prison. The surveillance grid tried to map your soul, but your soul was written in a language they'll never decode. They can't watch what they can't define. And you, chosen one, have just become invisible to their system. The window glitched. The network failed. And now, heaven is guiding your feet toward the opening they never wanted you to find. It started with a stillness, not peace, but pause, like the atmosphere itself was bracing for something. You looked up and noticed it right away. The clouds weren't moving, the birds weren't flying, even the light felt suspended, as if time had hiccuped over your street. And then it came, that low hum beneath the silence, like the sound of metal vibrating beneath the earth, except it was coming from above. The sky over your block had shifted, not metaphorically, spiritually. Chosen one, this isn't just weather, this is war. The grid that hovered invisibly over your neighborhood, the one designed to keep you asleep, has cracked. What used to be a dome of surveillance is now a leaking canopy of disrupted signals. You felt it, didn't you? That strange moment where the air felt thinner, like you could finally breathe for real. That wasn't your imagination. That was spiritual suffocation lifting. The Watchers placed a dome over your region to keep divine interference out, to block downloads from reaching you, to delay messages heaven had been trying to deliver for years. And now, that dome is failing. That's why the moon looked brighter last night. That's why the stars seemed to pulse like they were blinking in code. That's why clouds are forming unnatural shapes and dissolving before your eyes. The sky is reacting to your awakening. Your spiritual growth has sent shockwaves upward, not just inward, and the heavens are answering. The upper realms have taken notice. That's why you've been feeling strange pressure in your forehead. That's why lightning seems to strike without storm. That's why certain nights feel like the sky is leaning closer. You've pierced the atmosphere. Your prayers are no longer being delayed. They're being launched directly through the veil, and the enemy can't block them anymore. The sky over your block used to be a net. Now it's a window. Heaven is looking in, and earth is being rearranged because of you. Look at the patterns above you. Have you noticed how planes no longer cross directly over your home? How cloud cover behaves strangely when you worship or speak truth aloud? The system is failing. The coordinates tethered to your location are resetting, and the veil that once cloaked the Watchers is being peeled back by celestial force. That's why sirens have grown more frequent. That's why the air feels charged when you walk outside. The shift is not just in you. It's around you, above you, and soon, below you. The skies are responding to your timeline now, not theirs. You've exited their frequency, and in doing so, you've triggered atmospheric release. The old canopy is gone. The false shield is breaking, and the sky The real sky is opening. What comes next won't be subtle. Heaven is preparing your final move, and the signal is already visible to those with eyes to see. The sky above you has changed, and it's not going back. This is it, the final pulse, the last internal nudge you can't ignore. You feel it in your bones, in your skin, in the space between your thoughts. That sharp, holy knowing that something is telling you, go now, chosen one. You've been cleared to leave. Spiritually, energetically, strategically. The Watchers know, the grid knows, and most importantly, heaven knows. Your mission here has shifted. You were never sent to blend in with this neighborhood. You were sent to awaken inside it. And now that awakening has reached its threshold, what's been surrounding you can no longer hold you. The disguise is gone. The veil is gone. The dome is gone. The glitches weren't errors, they were escape signals. And this final one, the one that cracked your window, lit the sky, and echoed in your dreams like a countdown, that was confirmation. You've outgrown the containment field, you've destabilized the net, and the system around you is collapsing in slow motion. You've noticed it, the way your own name feels foreign here now, like it belongs to someone who stayed too long in someone else's cage, the way the streets feel artificial, the way even the wind seems to be whispering, run, and you must, not out of fear, but out of timing obedience, precision. You don't belong to this block. You never did. The people here were not who they claimed to be. The smiles were scripts, the houses were mechanisms, the silence was surveillance. But your spirit interrupted the program, and now they can't stop the unfolding. Doors are closing behind you, spiritually sealed, so you can never be dragged back into the containment cycle. You are being drawn forward by a force too ancient to be explained and too urgent to be delayed. The voices that once mocked you have gone silent. The energy that once pressed against your chest has weakened. The eyes that followed you from windows no longer track your movement. They tremble at it. You are a breach in their system. You are divine interference. And heaven has moved you into exit position. This is why the dreams changed, why the air shifted, why the pull has become unbearable. It's your spirit being lifted from a grid designed to drain you. And now the command is clear. Go leave before they build another mask. Leave before they reboot the illusion. Leave before you forget what your freedom feels like. Do not wait for validation. Do not wait for confirmation. This message is your final confirmation. When the chosen one is cleared, there is no debate, no hesitation, just movement. You don't need a suitcase. You don't need a plan. You only need to follow the alignment that has been guiding you this entire time. You've passed the test. The Watchers have failed. The veil has been torn. The sky is open. The path is clear. You've been released, not just physically, but cosmically. Now run, and don't look back.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.